Hey, everybody. My name is Meg Borland. I'm the owner of Equilibrium ADR. I am an NCTCP certified ADA coordinator and consultant with experience in the legal and civil rights settings. As always, we're going to start with our disclaimer with jazz hands. Ooh, and I say that with jazz hands because I mean it. The following is not legal advice, it is information for educational purposes and resources for you to explore. You can take it or leave it, it's up to you. So I've been asked this question a few times lately. Folks are heading out to different events and stuff, and they'll see a sign on the wall that says ADA, or there's chatter in the different chat apps and stuff that talk about accessibility or accommodations. And a few people have asked, what is this? Like, what's this about? What do you mean ADA coordinator? What is that? So, like, what do they do? And I just have to chuckle because the answer is not a simple one, just like their jobs. An ADA coordinator is typically somebody who's contracted by an event. If they're lucky, they'll have their own on staff. But the ADA coordinator is trained in the Americans with Disabilities Act. If you're not familiar, that is basically the set of laws that governs the civil rights of people with disabilities. There's a lot of different parts. I'm not going to get into it because it is very complicated. But the events that you're going to fall under Title III, which is public accommodations. It's because the events are open to the public, saying hey, come buy a ticket and come do this thing. So yeah, that's public accommodation. So the other thing is an ADA coordinator needs to be familiar with associated laws. And so I know a lot of you are asking questions from up in the Michigan area. Michigan itself has its own People with Disabilities Civil Rights Act, which is its own set of state laws. So you have federal and then you have state. They're different things. And so those govern what's considered discrimination. They also have the Elliott Larson Act, which deals with a whole other list of protected classes. So go Michigan. So an event that's going on has to comply with the ADA and the Civil Rights Acts. And then, depending on where they're located, there might be the municipality that they're in might have its own laws. So, like the city of Detroit has civil rights laws governing how people with disabilities should be treated. So, both the state of Michigan and the city of Detroit have their own enforcement agencies. Michigan has the Civil Rights Commission, and the city of Detroit has the Department of Civil Rights, Inclusion, and Opportunities, I believe, both of which accept complaints of discrimination on a whole number. There's a whole big list of things. And so those agencies can do their own, investigations and do their own rulings. They can issue penalties and handle enforcement. So they make sure that businesses are complying. So um, the ADA coordinator is also a liaison between the event management and the venue for event space ADA compliance. So what that means is you have, let's say, a conference. So the people putting on the conference, and then you say the conference is happening at a hotel. So the hotel has its own responsibilities and liabilities. The conference people have their own responsibilities and liabilities. So it's, again, a lot of moving pieces, and they all have to fit to be compliant. So the ADA coordinator will often go into the venue early and take a look at anywhere that the conference is taking place. So if there's a big ballroom where there's going to be, big opening ceremonies and speeches and all that stuff, and then a closing, all of that stuff, they're going to go in, they're going to do an assessment for a whole number of things. Is there space for equipment they need for assistive captions, or is the AV equipment equipped for assistive listening? A whole lot of things. But that they'll go through. Is there spaces being used for classrooms or events? Take a look at all of those. Paths of travel, so hallways, walkways, any of that stuff. Restrooms, water fountains, all kinds of things. The height of the bar, if everybody's able to go over to the bar to get a drink. Is there an accessible area? So a lot of different pieces. everything from elevators, stairwells. Is there a barbecue on the back patio? So everything between the main building and that back patio, all that means of travel in between, all of it, they assess it all. If they find something that's not compliant, then they document it and notify the conference people, and then also speak with the appropriate people at the hotel to let them know, hey, by the way, these things are not compliant. Is there any way to fix this before the event? If not, well, then the conference has documentation that they've done their due diligence to make sure, everything is compliant as possible, but it's outside sometimes, most of the time, it's outside what they're able to do to mitigate, because it's the hotel's responsibility. So a good ADA coordinator knows all that stuff and can handle all of that. So the ADA coordinator also advises and assesses event management in all aspects to maintain ADA compliance. That is a huge one. That is literally from end to end, from before the con when they're sending out information, you know, uh, emails, communications, any of that stuff, all the way through the process, registration, website compliance, um, reasonable accommodation requests ahead of time, all the way through active listening. Um, oh my gosh, there's so many pieces. They're the ones making sure that everything that the convention is doing in that previous hypothetical, um, everything the convention is doing is compliant, so that again they don't get sued or get a civil complaint. So there's a lot of moving parts to that as well. A lot of events are hesitant to deal with that because they feel it's too expensive or too difficult or whatever. A knowledgeable ADA coordinator is able to help out with that. So the ADA coordinator will also advise the staff and volunteers to spread compliance and etiquette training. So this is basically providing education and training for, again, like the staff members, volunteers, within the scope of whatever it is they're going to be doing. Here's what's allowed. Here's what's not allowed. Here's some best practice. Here's how to be respectful. All of that stuff. So if some some of you have shared some pretty horrific stories. I've witnessed some pretty horrific stories that a volunteer or a staff member will open their mouth and just spew what is discriminatory, however uninformed or well intentioned or whatever. It doesn't matter. You broke the law. So if things like that are happening, again, it's the ADA coordinator's responsibility to address it. Because they're going to know, how was this not compliant, how was it, like, what level of liability are we exposed to, all of that stuff. So yeah, any of the horrific stuff from the stories you guys have been telling me, that falls on the ADA coordinator. um, they're also going to collect the feedback for ADA related concerns. So again, if the staff member say grabbed an attendee's wheelchair and went to help them, again, well intentioned, doesn't matter, that's a violation on a number of levels. um, so getting that feedback from attendees and stuff, hey, this attendee did, or this volunteer staff member did this thing, whatever. The ADA coordinator is going to collect all of that stuff again, so the organization knows how much liability they're exposed to. They also know how to how to appropriately address it with the people, with the attendees that are complaining. So it's also going to collect things, so you have an idea of um, the attendees and what accommodations you need. So if you find in a feedback survey that you have more hard of hearing attendees than you thought, or you have people with auditory processing disorders, then the ASL interpreters you provided, that's great if you speak ASL. So if that's not your primary form of communication or accommodation, then maybe something like captioning or CART is more appropriate. That feedback, that data that the ADA coordinator is going to collect, is going to help to know these things, so that going forward you have what you need so everybody can enjoy themselves. So they're also going to help manage the reasonable accommodation process for attendees. That should be its own system on the front end. so that, again, you know who's coming, what accommodations are going to be needed so that you have enough of them, all of those types of things. So, what is a reasonable accommodation? That is a modification or adjustment in practice or policy that allows an attendee with a disability to enjoy the same con-going experience to the extent as any other attendee. So, examples of these are like ASL interpreters for deaf or hard of hearing attendees, captioning on projected presentations or separate screens so that people with hard of hearing, um, auditory processing, or deaf individuals who may not use ASL as a primary accommodation, so they can actually follow along as well. Large print materials for attendees with low vision, designated wheelchair accessible seating with companion seating. The list goes on and on. There are so many different things. People are unique, and so are a lot of the accommodations they may request. So, what do you do if you need a reasonable accommodation? How do you find out what accommodations might work for you? How do you go about submitting requests for reasonable accommodations to a con? What do you do if an event doesn't have an ADA coordinator or designated staff member to handle these things? So, all of these I can help you with. You can book a consultation. You can learn more about your rights and responsibilities for getting accommodations at events. These are your civil rights, so you are entitled to them. I can help you in writing your own reasonable accommodation request uh, to give you a printable form to take to the conventions to provide with registration so that they know what you're going to need as far as accommodations. And learning how to submit your RAs to cons in the future. So just because a con doesn't necessarily have their own RA process doesn't mean that that doesn't apply to you. So there's a lot of other tips and tricks for having a better experience and being able to enjoy a con with the best accessibility possible. So, how do we do that? You can email me at consult@equilibriumadr.com. We can make an appointment and talk about that to set you up with that RA. So, hope you found this information helpful. You could check out our YouTube channel for more content, more videos, Equilibrium ADR. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and feel free to share. Hit that little bell for more notifications for when new stuff comes out. We do have some new videos in the works, so feel free to check that out. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, stay geeky. Take care.